The communication reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Chen Zhao stood in the orbital command center, watching the alien vessel drift toward the docking bay. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest tight. The ship looked like a crystal flower, all smooth curves and glowing edges. Nothing like the hard angles of human vessels. "They're scared," his second officer said quietly. Chen nodded. He had read the reports. 50 years ago, humanity discovered they were not alone. The Galactic Coalition had been watching Earth for centuries, waiting to see if humans would destroy themselves before reaching the stars. They almost had. 3 world wars, countless smaller ones, weapons that could crack planets, but somehow humans survived. They always did. The alien stepped off the ship. Ambassador Kelthrin was tall, covered in scales that shifted between green and blue. His eyes were large and golden, built for seeing in low light. He moved with careful grace like every step was rehearsed. Behind him came 2 guards, though Chen suspected they were more afraid of humans than any threat to their ambassador. "Admiral Chen Zhao," Kelthrin said. His translator device made his voice sound smooth, almost musical. "I bring greetings from the Galactic Coalition Council." "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador." Chen extended his hand. Kelthrin stared at it for a moment before carefully taking it. His scales were cool and dry. "Let's talk somewhere more comfortable." They moved to a meeting room with windows showing Earth below. Kelthrin kept glancing at the planet, at the swirling clouds and blue oceans. Chen knew what he was thinking. Every alien who visited had the same look. Earth was deadly, gravity that would crush smaller species, oxygen levels that were nearly poison, weather that could kill in minutes, bacteria and viruses that evolved to survive anything, and yet humans thrived here. "I will be direct, Admiral." Kelthrin began, settling into a chair designed for his body type. "The Coalition is losing a war." Chen poured water for both of them. Kelthrin eyed the glass nervously. Water from Earth could carry 1,000 things that might harm him. But refusing would be an insult. He took a small sip. "Tell me about your enemy," Chen said. "We call them the Devourers. They arrived 3,000 years ago from beyond our mapped space. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They consume entire worlds, breaking them down for resources. Their ships are grown, not built. Biological. Alive." Kelthrin's scales darkened, a sign of distress. "We have fought them to a standstill, but we are dying slowly, losing ground every year. In another century, perhaps 2, the Coalition will fall. And you want our help." "Yes." Kelthrin met his eyes. "The Coalition Council debated for months. Many voted against contacting you. They fear humanity more than the Devourers." Chen smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "Because we're violent. Because you are incomprehensible." Kelthrin pulled up a holographic display. It showed images, videos, data streams. "We studied your history. Your species wages war on itself constantly. You create weapons designed only to kill other humans. Your entertainment is filled with violence. You celebrate warriors and battles. You have a concept called extreme sports where you risk death for enjoyment." The hologram shifted, showing biological data. "Your world should have killed you. Instead, you adapted. You can survive injuries that would kill most species. You heal from wounds that should be permanent. You can function for days without sleep. Your pain tolerance is abnormal. You have redundant systems in your biology. And your pack bonding instinct means you will die for creatures that are not even your own species." "You've done your homework," Chen said. "We had to, because inviting you into this war might be the biggest mistake the galaxy has ever made." Kelthrin's voice was steady, but Chen saw his hands shaking slightly. "There are species on the Council who believe that once you finish with the Devourers, you will turn on us. Will we?" "I do not know. I hope not. But we are desperate, Admiral. We need your violence, your inexplicable human stubbornness, your ability to look at impossible situations and fight anyway." Kelthrin closed the hologram. "Will you help us?" Chen stood and walked to the window. Below, Earth turned in the darkness of space. 50 years ago, when the first alien probe was detected, humanity panicked. Then they united in a way they never had before. The nations of Earth looked at the stars and realized they were one people, one species. And out there, beyond their small blue world, an entire galaxy waited. "The Coalition fears us," Chen said slowly. "But you came anyway. That takes courage, Ambassador. Or desperation. Maybe both." Chen turned back. "I'll need to speak with Earth's government. But I can tell you what they'll say. Humans have been fighting since we learned to make fists. We're good at it. Too good, maybe. But we also understand something important. We fight so that others don't have to. We fight to protect. If your coalition is defending innocent lives, then yes, we'll help. Kelthrin's scales shifted to a lighter color. Relief. There are protocols, agreements to sign, joint command structures to establish. We'll work it out. How soon do you need us? Yesterday, if possible. The Devourers are pushing toward the tiers of Ashara system. If it falls, we lose a major defensive position. Millions will die. Chen activated his communication device. Get me the UN Security Council. And start mobilizing the fleet. We have work to do. Over the next 3 weeks, Earth exploded into activity. Ships that had been built for exploration were retrofitted for war. Soldiers trained for peacekeeping operations learned to fight an enemy that did not think like them. Scientists worked with coalition experts, sharing technology and tactics. Chen watched it all from his command ship, the Indomitable. Around him, 300 human vessels prepared to jump to the tiers of Ashara. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. And according to coalition estimates, it was nowhere near enough. Sir, his communications officer called. We're receiving transmissions. Coalition command channels. They're not encrypted properly. I don't think they realize we can hear. What are they saying? The officer looked uncomfortable. They're placing bets on how quickly we'll retreat. Some are taking odds on whether we'll survive the first battle, and... She hesitated. One admiral is recommending they keep ships back to contain us if we go rogue. Chen felt a cold anger settle in his chest. Not at the aliens. They had reasons to fear. Humans had given them plenty of reasons over the years. But that fear would not stop what came next. Open a channel to all ships, he ordered. When the light went green, he spoke clearly. This is Admiral Chen Zhao to all human vessels. In a few minutes, we jump to our first combat engagement with an enemy we've never fought. The coalition is afraid of us. Maybe they should be. But we're not here to prove them right. We're here to prove them wrong. We're here to show them what humans really are. We fight for those who can't. We stand against the dark. And we never ever give up. See you on the other side, the fleet jumped. Behind them, Earth grew small and distant. Ahead, the war waited. And across coalition channels in 1,000 languages on 100 worlds, a single message began to spread. The humans were coming. The Tiers of Ashara system was dying. Chen could see it on the tactical display. Coalition ships retreated in broken formations. Devourer bioships pursued them like predators chasing wounded prey. The enemy vessels looked wrong. They were not built. They had been grown. Bone-white hulls covered in ridges and spines. Organic weapons that pulsed with sickly green light. Coalition forces are down to 40% combat effectiveness, his tactical officer reported. They're requesting immediate support. All ships break into combat formations. Let's go say hello. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the battle. Devourer ships immediately shifted targets. Chen watched their movement patterns. They hunted like pack animals, coordinated, intelligent, but they moved like they expected their prey to run. Sir, receiving multiple hails from coalition forces, they're telling us to fall back to defensive positions. Ignore them. All ships attack pattern Delta. Target the largest concentration of enemy vessels. Sir, that's suicide. Chen smiled. Exactly. They won't expect it. The Indomitable surged forward, 300 human ships following. The coalition channels erupted in panicked voices. What were the humans doing? They were charging directly at the enemy's strongest position. It made no tactical sense, but Chen had read the reports. The Devourers were a hive mind. They thought as one. They expected logical behavior. Predictable responses. Humans were neither. All weapons free fire. Show them what we brought. Human railguns opened up. Solid slugs of metal accelerated to a fraction of light speed. They punched through Devourer bioships, leaving clean holes that leaked atmosphere and fluids. Missiles followed. Nuclear warheads painting the darkness with brief stars. The Devourers returned fire. Biological projectiles that ate through armor like acid. Shields at 60%. Hull breaches on deck 7 and 12. Keep firing. Close the distance, Mach, sir, they're surrounding us. Good, less chance of missing. The battle became chaos. Human ships wove through enemy formations, firing at point-blank range. A destroyer rammed a Devourer cruiser, the impact crumpling both vessels. But before the human ship broke apart, its crew set off the reactor. The explosion took 3 enemy ships with it. On coalition channels, the chatter stopped. They watched in silence. Captain Okonkwo reports her Marines are ready for boarding operations, the communications officer said. Tell her she's cleared. Pick her target. Sarah Okonkwo stood in the drop bay of her assault ship. Around her, 200 Marines checked their weapons and armor. She could feel the ship shaking from weapons fire. Good. That meant they were close. Listen up, she called out. Her voice was calm. She had done this 100 times in training, never against aliens that wanted to eat entire worlds, but the principle was the same. We're about to board a Devourer bioship. Intelligence says it's full of warrior forms. They're bigger than us, stronger. They have claws and teeth and acid blood. They don't feel fear. They don't surrender. She checked her rifle, a heavy weapon designed to punch through armor. But here's what they don't have. They don't have Sarah Okonkwo. They don't have you beautiful maniacs. And they don't have humanity's very bad habit of fighting things that should absolutely kill us. She grinned. Let's go introduce ourselves. The assault ship latched onto the Devourer vessel. Cutting torches burned through the hull. The moment the breach was open, warrior forms poured through. They were nightmares. 8 feet tall, covered in black carapace armor with claws like swords. Sarah shot the first one in what she hoped was its head. It fell. The second one she hit with a plasma grenade. The explosion was beautiful. Move, move, move. Don't let them bottle us up. Her Marines flooded into the enemy ship. The interior was organic. Walls that pulsed like they were alive. The air was thick and hot. Sarah's helmet systems filtered out toxins that would have killed her in seconds. A warrior form dropped from the ceiling. Sarah didn't think. She just moved. Her combat knife found a gap in its armor. The creature shrieked and slashed at her. Its claw caught her shoulder, tearing through armor. Sarah felt pain bright and sharp. She ignored it and kept stabbing until the thing stopped moving. Captain, you're hit, her medic called. I'm fine. Keep moving. They fought through corridors that twisted like intestines. The Devourers came in waves. The Marines held them off with gunfire and grenades, and when they got close, with knives and fists. One private lost his weapon and beat a warrior form to death with his helmet. Another Marine was grabbed by 3 of them. Her squad mates pulled her free and kept fighting. Sarah checked her tactical display. They were deep in the ship now, close to what intelligence said was the control center. Plant the charges. We're turning this thing into a landmark. On the Coalition observation ship, Ambassador Kelthrin watched the battle with growing horror. The humans were not fighting like any species he had ever seen. They were not trying to minimize casualties. They were not falling back when overwhelmed. They were attacking. Sir, you need to see this, one of his officers said. She pulled up video from inside the Devourer bioship. It showed human Marines fighting in conditions that should be impossible. They were wounded, exhausted, surrounded, and they were laughing. One human soldier was cornered by 3 warrior forms. She pulled out a grenade, activated it, and charged at them screaming. The explosion killed all of them. Why? Kelthrin whispered. Why would she do that? Because her squad needed time to escape, the officer said quietly. The humans call it sacrifice. They consider it honorable. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 30 Devourer ships were destroyed or disabled. The human fleet had lost 40 vessels. By any calculation, they had taken massive casualties, but they had stopped the enemy advance. The Coalition forces were safe. Chen sat in his command chair, watching the damage reports scroll past. Good people were dead. The Indomitable had taken hits that would keep them in dock for weeks. But they had won. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Devourer ships. They're withdrawing. Chen sat up. What? All remaining enemy vessels are breaking off. They're retreating. Across the bridge, his crew stared in disbelief. The Devourers never retreated. They fought until they won or were destroyed. It was what made them so terrifying. Get me Coalition command. Kelthrin's face appeared on the screen. He looked shaken. Admiral, what did you do? We fought. Why are they running? We intercepted their hive communications. We have translation algorithms that can decode basic meanings. Kelthrin's scales were pale. The Devourers are afraid, Admiral. For the first time in 3,000 years, they felt fear. Chen looked at the retreating enemy ships on his display. Good, he said quietly. They should be. Captain Okonkwo stumbled off the assault ship. Her shoulder was bandaged. The medics had pumped her full of drugs to keep her standing. Around her, the survivors of the boarding action gathered. 200 had gone in. 147 came back. She thought about the ones who didn't. Good soldiers. They had died fighting. There were worse ways to go. A coalition officer approached her carefully. He was small, covered in gray fur with large eyes that made him look perpetually worried. "Captain Okonkwo? I am Medical Commander Thrall. May I examine your wound?" Sarah waved him off. "I'm fine. Check on my people first. Captain, you have a wound that penetrated your armor. You should be unconscious from pain. Possibly dead from shock." Sarah looked down at her shoulder. The medics had sealed it, but blood still seeped through the bandages. "Yeah, it hurts. I'll deal with it later." Thrall's fur stood on end. "This is normal for humans? To continue fighting with such injuries? Normal enough." Sarah accepted a bottle of water from one of her Marines. "We're pretty hard to kill. Comes from evolving on a planet that spent millions of years trying." She looked back at the damaged Devourer ship. It was breaking apart now, torn open by the charges her team had planted. "Doc, you want to know the truth? We're not fighting because we're brave. We're fighting because we're terrified. Terrified of what happens if we lose. Terrified of losing the people next to us. So we push through the fear and the pain and we keep going. That's what humans do." Thrall was quiet for a moment. "Then I hope we never give you a reason to turn that determination against us." Sarah smiled tiredly. "So do I, Doc. So do I." In the days that followed, something changed across the war zone. The Devourers stopped attacking coalition positions where human forces were stationed. They pulled back from sectors where human ships patrolled. And in the hive communications that coalition intelligence monitored, a new concept appeared. A concept that had no translation in the Devourer language. Fear. The news spread through the coalition like fire through dry grass. Humanity had pushed back the Devourers. More than that, they had made the enemy retreat. Species that had fought this war for generations struggled to process what that meant. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the destroyer Relentless, watching the coalition supply convoy form up ahead. His orders were simple: escort them through the neutral zone to the Kethera colony. It should have been routine. "Sir, sensors are picking up movement. 5 Devourer hunters closing fast on the convoy." Marcus checked the tactical display. The convoy had 12 transports carrying food and medical supplies. Only 3 coalition warships for protection. And now 5 enemy ships. The math was bad. All hands to battle stations. "Helm, put us between the convoy and those hunters." "Sir, we're one ship. We should signal for backup." "And wait how long? 30 minutes, an hour?" Marcus shook his head. "Those transports are full of civilians. We don't get to choose when to fight." The Relentless accelerated toward the Devourer ships. Behind him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. They were scared. He was scared. But fear was just another thing to push through. The lead Devourer hunter opened fire. Bioplasma tore through space. The Relentless shook as hits landed on the shields. "Return fire. Target their propulsion systems." "Sir, the convoy is breaking formation. They're trying to scatter," Marcus swore. Standard coalition doctrine. When attacked, run and hope some survive. But scattering meant the hunters could pick them off one by one. "Open a channel to the convoy. Tell them to stay together. We'll cover them." "Captain Webb," a voice responded. It was the convoy commander, a Velkari like Ambassador Kelthrin. "You cannot protect us all. Save yourself. Not how we do things. Keep your ships together and run. We'll buy you time." The Relentless danced between the hunters and the convoy. Marcus used every trick he knew. Cutting close to asteroids. Dumping debris to confuse sensors. Firing missiles in patterns that forced the enemy to dodge. But there were 5 of them and 1 of him. The shields were failing. Hull breaches were spreading. "Sir, engine room reports we've lost main power. We're running on reserves." Marcus looked at the convoy. They were almost to the jump point. "Almost safe. Just needed a few more minutes, helm full burn." "Ram the lead hunter, sir." "You heard me. Everyone else get to the escape pods. Go now." "Captain, we're not leaving you," his executive officer said. "That's an order, Commander. Get them out." "No, sir. Respectfully, if you're staying, we're all staying." Marcus looked around his bridge. His crew stared back at him. They knew what this meant. They were going to die. And not one of them was moving toward the escape pods. He felt something break open in his chest. Pride, maybe, or love. For these crazy, stubborn people who refuse to leave. All right, then. Let's make it count. Full power to forward shields. If we're going to hit them, let's hit them hard. The Relentless charged. The hunters fired everything they had. The ship came apart around them, but momentum carried them forward. The destroyer crashed into the lead hunter like a hammer. The impact tore both ships open. In the last seconds, Marcus activated the reactor overload. The explosion lit up the darkness like a small sun. When the light faded, 4 Devourer hunters remained. But the convoy had jumped to safety. 3,000 civilians lived because one human crew decided their lives mattered more than their own. Ambassador Kelthrin received the news in his quarters on the Coalition command station. The Relentless was gone. All hands lost. They had rammed an enemy vessel to protect a convoy from his own species, the same species whose government had voted against including humans in the war. He pulled up the personnel files. Captain Marcus Webb, age 32, married, 2 children back on Earth. Commander Lisa Tran, age 28, engaged to be married. He read through all 47 names. All of them had families, people who loved them, lives they would never return to, and they had died protecting strangers who feared them. Kelthrin walked to Admiral Chen's office. The human sat behind his desk staring at the same personnel files. "I'm sorry for your loss, Admiral." Chen nodded slowly. "We all are. But that's not why you're here." "No." Kelthrin settled into a chair. "I need to understand. Why would Captain Webb sacrifice his ship? His crew for people he did not know? For a species that does not trust him? Because that's what humans do." Chen closed the files. "You asked me once if humanity would turn on the Coalition after this war ends. I couldn't answer then, but I can now. We won't. Because humans have this weird thing in our nature. We pack bond. With other humans, with animals, with anything that seems alive. Once we decide something is part of our pack, we protect it. Even if it costs us everything. Pack bonding." Kelthrin tested the word. "We studied this in your biology. But it was theoretical, abstract. Watching it happen is something else entirely." Captain Webb and his crew decided that Convoy was part of their pack. So they protected it. Simple as that. There is nothing simple about it, Admiral. That kind of loyalty, that willingness to die for others. It is beyond anything most species can conceive. Chen stood and walked to the window. Outside, human ships moved in formation with Coalition vessels. Training together. Learning to work as one force. Let me tell you a story, Ambassador. Back on Earth, thousands of years ago, humans were prey animals. We weren't the strongest. We weren't the fastest. Big predators hunted us, so we learned to work together. We formed groups, tribes. We protected each other because alone we died. That instinct never went away. We still form tribes. We still protect our own. The only difference now is that our tribe includes anyone who stands with us." Kelthrin's scales shifted through colors. Processing. "The Devourers cannot understand this. Their hive mind thinks as one. They do not have individuals who choose to sacrifice for others. That is why they fear you. Maybe. But fear isn't what we're after. We want them to stop killing. If fear accomplishes that, fine. If not, we'll find another way." Over the following months, more stories spread. A human medical team that stayed behind on an evacuating colony world to treat the wounded. Even as Devourer forces closed in, they were rescued at the last minute, still working. A human pilot who ejected over enemy territory. Coalition protocol said to leave him. The enemy controlled the area, but his squadron didn't leave. They fought for 6 hours to extract him. 7 ships were lost. 23 crew members died. They got him out. The stories reached every corner of Coalition space. And with them came requests. Coalition units asked for human advisors. Commanders wanted to learn human tactics. Even species that had voted against humanity's inclusion began to change their minds. Dr. Amara Singh found herself giving lectures to Coalition scientists. They wanted to understand human biology. Why could humans keep fighting with injuries that should be fatal? How did they function on so little sleep? What made their pain tolerance so high? "It's evolution," she explained to a room full of alien doctors. "Earth is what we call a death world. High gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators, deadly diseases. Humans evolved to survive all of it. Our bodies have redundant systems. If one kidney fails, the other takes over. We can lose large amounts of blood and keep functioning. Our brains release chemicals that suppress pain during emergencies. We're built to survive." "But the psychological aspects," one doctor asked. "The willingness to endure suffering for others. That is not evolution. That is choice." Amara smiled. "Yes, that's what makes us human. We choose to protect. We choose to sacrifice. We choose to stand and fight when running would be smarter. Biology gave us the tools to survive. Culture taught us to use those tools for others. On the front lines, the change was visible. Coalition soldiers stopped seeing humans as terrifying monsters. They started seeing them as allies. As friends, human soldiers would share rations with alien troops. They would carry wounded coalition members to safety. They would sit and talk after battles, learning about each other's homes. Private James Chen found himself sharing a trench with a Ketharan soldier named Prill. The Ketharan was small and covered in fur, with large ears that swiveled constantly. "Why do you fight?" Prill asked. "Your world is far from here. The Devourers cannot reach Earth." James thought about it. "My grandfather fought in Earth's last war. He used to say that evil wins when good people do nothing. The Devourers are evil. We're good people. So we do something. But you could die." "Yeah, but if I don't fight, you might die. And a lot of other people too. That doesn't sit right with me." Prill was quiet for a long time. "On my world, we have a saying. To know someone's heart, watch what they do when no one is looking. The Coalition has been watching humanity closely. We see your hearts now. And what do you see? Warriors who fight not for glory or conquest, but for the simple reason that someone must. I think we were wrong to fear you. I think we should have invited you sooner." James grinned. "Better late than never, buddy. Better late than never." In the Coalition Council chambers, votes were being taken. Motions to integrate human forces into all defensive operations. Proposals to share more advanced technology with Earth. Discussions about full Coalition membership for humanity. The tide was turning. The galaxy had feared humans. Now they were beginning to understand them. And in the dark spaces between stars, the Devourers retreated from sectors where humans operated. Their hive mind struggled with new concepts: sacrifice, loyalty, irrational courage. These things did not compute, could not be processed. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers experienced doubt, and doubt was the seed of defeat. The briefing room was packed with representatives from every major Coalition species. Admiral Chen stood at the front, watching the holographic display show 3 worlds: the Devourer breeding worlds, where the enemy created their warrior forms, where their hive mind was strongest. "Intelligence has been monitoring Devourer communications," Chen began. "What we've learned changes everything. The hive mind is fragmenting, breaking apart. They're experiencing something they've never felt before. Fear, confusion, doubt, and it's killing them." A Velkari admiral spoke up. "How is psychological damage killing them?" "They're biological weapons. Because their entire existence is based on unity, one mind controlling billions of bodies. But we've introduced concepts that contradict their nature: sacrifice without purpose, fighting hopeless battles, loyalty to individuals. Their hive mind can't process it. It's like a computer trying to divide by 0. The system crashes." Chen zoomed in on the 3 worlds. "These breeding worlds are the core of their operation. Destroy them and we cut off their ability to make new warrior forms. Coalition High Command has calculated that we need a force of 2 million soldiers and 5,000 ships. They estimate 70% casualties. It will take years to organize." He paused. "Or we could do it now with the forces we have. Hit them fast before they recover." "Before they adapt," the room erupted. Species shouted in a dozen languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. It was suicide, impossible, insane. Chen waited for them to quiet down. Every species that voted against humanity joining this war was afraid we'd be too violent, too reckless. Guess what? You were right, we are. But that's what this situation needs. The Devourers expect logical responses, careful planning. We're going to give them chaos. "How many ships do you propose to use?" a Catharan commander asked. "Everything we have. Every human vessel. Every Coalition ship that's willing to volunteer." "And casualties?" Chen met his eyes. "High, very high. But here's what you need to understand. Humans volunteer for this kind of mission. We raise our hands for impossible odds. It's how we're built. Why?" The question came from Ambassador Kelthrin. "Why would you volunteer to die?" "Because if we don't, this war continues. More people die slowly over decades. We'd rather end it fast even if it costs us everything. That's the deal. We're not good at long, careful wars. We're good at desperate charges and last stands." The vote was taken. 15 species volunteered their forces. The rest would provide support and logistics. In total, 800 ships. 1 million soldiers. By Coalition estimates, it was not enough. By human estimates, it would have to be. 3 weeks later, the combined fleet jumped into the first breeding world system. The planet below was covered in organic structures, massive hives that pulsed with life. Orbital defenses opened fire immediately. Bioships poured out like insects from a disturbed nest. All ships begin attack run.
Hit everything that moves. The battle was brutal from the first second.
Devourer defenders outnumbered the coalition force 3-1. But the attackers had surprise and fury on their side. Captain Okonkwo led the ground assault. Her dropship fell through fire and smoke. Around her, 2,000 Marines prepared to land on a world that was literally alive, a world that wanted them dead. 30 seconds to touchdown. Check your seals. Check your buddy. Remember your training. The ship hit hard. The ramp dropped. Sarah stepped onto the breeding world and immediately felt it react. The ground writhed under her feet. Spines erupted from the surface. Warrior forms charged from every direction. Push forward. Don't give them time to organize. The Marines advanced in formation. Flamethrowers turned the organic structures into ash. Explosives cratered the living ground. Behind them, more dropships landed. Tanks rolled out, their treads crushing defensive spines. But the Devourers kept coming. For every warrior form killed, 2 more appeared. Sarah's HUD showed casualty reports streaming in. Red markers everywhere. They were dying, but they were not stopping. "Captain, we've reached the primary hive structure," her lieutenant called. "It's massive. Bigger than anything we trained for." Sarah looked up at the structure. It rose like a mountain, pulsing with internal light. Organic tunnels led deep inside. This was it. The heart of the breeding world. Set charges at the entrance. "We're going in. Captain, if we go in there, we complete the mission. That's what we came for." "Move out." They descended into the hive. The walls around them were alive, watching them with thousands of small eyes. The air was thick with spores that their filters barely caught. Warrior forms attacked in waves. The Marines fought them off, but the cost was terrible. Sarah's shoulder wound had reopened. She could feel blood running down her arm. Her armor's medical systems were pumping her full of stimulants to keep her moving. Around her, her Marines were in similar condition. Wounded, exhausted, but still fighting. "How much deeper?" someone asked. "As deep as it takes." They found the breeding chamber 2 kilometers down. It was huge. Thousands of cocoons lined the walls. Inside them, new warrior forms grew. At the center, a massive structure pulsed. The local hive node. Destroy it, and this entire world would go dark. Plant all remaining explosives. Everything we have. Set them for synchronized detonation. "Captain, we don't have time to get out." Sarah looked at her Marines. 47 had entered the hive with her. 23 remained. They were beat up, shot up, and burned, and every one of them was still standing. "Then we make time. Set the charges for 10 minutes. We run for the exit. Anyone who falls, we carry. Anyone who can't keep up, we drag. Nobody gets left behind. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, Captain." They planted the charges and ran. The hive came alive around them. The walls closed in. Warrior forms poured from every tunnel. The Marines fought as they retreated, firing over their shoulders, throwing grenades, helping each other over obstacles. Sarah's leg gave out. A warrior form had caught her with its claws. She fell hard. "Captain?" Her lieutenant grabbed her arm. "Come on." "I'm good." Keep moving, but she wasn't good. She could barely stand. The stimulants were wearing off. Her vision was blurring. 2 Marines grabbed her. "We got you, Captain. Just hold on." They emerged from the hive with 90 seconds to spare. Dropships swooped in, grabbing soldiers and pulling them up. Sarah felt herself being lifted. Below, the hive structure trembled. The charges went off. The breeding world convulsed. The hive collapsed inward. Chain reactions spread across the surface. Organic structures burned. The planet screamed. It took 2 days to secure the first breeding world. The cost was devastating. 300 ships lost, 200,000 casualties. But the world was dead. The Devourers would birth no more warriors there. 2 breeding worlds remained. Admiral Chen sat in his command chair, reviewing reports. The fleet was battered. Every ship had damage. Every unit had lost people. Coalition commanders were requesting time to regroup, to resupply, to mourn. "Send a message to all ships," Chen said. "We move on the second breeding world in 12 hours. Sir, the crews need rest, and the Devourers need time to adapt. We don't give them that. We hit them again while they're still reeling. That's how we win." The second breeding world was ready for them. The Devourers had reinforced it with everything they had. The battle was worse than the first. Ship-to-ship combat that lasted for days. Ground fighting that turned the surface into a graveyard. But the coalition forces pushed forward. Human Marines led charges that should have failed. Coalition soldiers followed them, inspired by their refusal to give up. Species that had never fought together before learned to coordinate, to trust each other, to die for each other. The second breeding world fell. The cost climbed higher. 500 ships lost now, 400,000 casualties. But 2 breeding worlds were dead. 1 remained. The fleet limped toward the final breeding world. Every ship was damaged. Every soldier was wounded. Command staff calculated their chances at less than 10%. It should have been over. They should have retreated, but no one suggested it. Not the coalition commanders, not the human forces. They had come too far, lost too much. One more world, one more battle. The final breeding world was defended by everything the Devourers had left. 10,000 bioships, millions of warrior forms, defensive systems that covered the entire planet. It was a fortress, impregnable. The coalition fleet jumped in and attacked anyway. Captain Okonkwo was back on the ground despite her injuries. Despite the fact that medical officers had tried to keep her in the hospital ship. She had 12 Marines with her now, 12 out of the 200 she started with. They were the last of her unit. The survivors. They fought their way toward the final hive. Every step was paid for in blood, but they kept moving forward. "Captain," her lieutenant said. He was young, barely 20. This was his first combat deployment. He had lost his left arm in the previous battle. "We're not going to make it out of this one, are we?" Sarah checked her ammunition. Almost empty. Probably not. Then why are we still fighting? She looked at him, at the kid who had followed her into hell and kept going. Because someone has to. And because I'd rather die trying than live knowing I gave up. "You with me?" He smiled. It was tired and sad, but real. "Always, Captain, always." They reached the hive, set the charges, and this time there was no escape. The tunnels collapsed behind them. They were trapped inside with 1,000 warrior forms in 10 minutes until detonation. "Well," Sarah said, checking her remaining grenades. "This is it. Been an honor serving with you all." "Honor's ours, Captain," someone replied. They formed a circle, backs together, facing outward. The warrior forms came. The Marines fought. Every bullet counted. Every grenade was precious. They fought until their weapons were empty. Then they fought with knives. Then with fists. When the charges detonated, Sarah Okonkwo was still fighting. The final breeding world died. The fleet withdrew what was left of it. 300 ships remained from the original 800. 600,000 casualties. But all 3 breeding worlds were destroyed. The Devourer's ability to make new warriors was gone. In the wreckage, rescue teams searched for survivors. They found Captain Okonkwo 3 days later. She was buried under rubble, barely alive. Her body was broken, but she had survived. "Captain," a medic said, shocked. "How are you still breathing?" Sarah tried to smile. "It probably looked terrible. Hard to kill. It's a human thing." Across the fleet, the news spread. The mission was complete. The cost had been terrible, but they had done it. The breeding worlds were gone, and in the darkness of space, the remaining Devourer forces received the news. Their hive mind processed what had happened. An enemy had voluntarily suffered massive casualties to achieve an objective, had fought impossible odds and won through sheer determination. The Devourers did something they had never done in their entire existence. They sent a communication requesting peace talks, and they refused to negotiate with anyone except the humans. 6 months after the fall of the breeding worlds, Admiral Chen stood in a meeting room that had been built specifically for this moment. One side was designed for oxygen-breathing species. The other was filled with the thick, humid atmosphere the Devourers needed. Between them, a transparent barrier. "I still think this is a terrible idea," Ambassador Keltrin said quietly, meeting them face to face. "They requested it specifically," Chen replied. "They won't talk to anyone except humans. We are the ones who broke them. We're the ones they need to understand." The door on the Devourer side opened. 3 beings entered. They were not the warrior forms everyone expected. These were queen minds, smaller, more fragile-looking. Their carapaces were pale and smooth. Their eyes were larger, intelligent, aware. Chen stepped forward. The lead queen mind approached the barrier. "I am Admiral Chen Zhao. I speak for humanity and the Coalition." The queen mind touched the barrier with one delicate claw. When it spoke, the translation device made its voice sound hollow, empty. I am first among queens. I speak for what remains of the Devourers. We come to seek peace, to end the war, to understand what defeated us. What defeated you was your own inability to understand that some species fight for more than survival. Yes, this is what we do not comprehend. Your species suffered massive casualties. By all logic, you should have retreated. Instead, you attacked again and again, accepting losses that would destroy any rational force. Wai Chen thought about how to explain it, how to make a hive mind understand individual choice and sacrifice. Because we weren't fighting for ourselves. We were fighting for others, for species we barely knew, for worlds we'd never seen. Humans have this idea that if you have power, you have responsibility. We had the power to stop you, so it was our responsibility to do it, even if it cost us. The Queen Mind was silent for a long time. In our existence, we have consumed 300 worlds, destroyed 12 civilizations. We thought we were the ultimate expression of evolution, a perfect collective mind. But you showed us our weakness. We cannot understand sacrifice, cannot process loyalty, cannot comprehend fighting for abstract concepts. Your chaos broke our order. Is that why you're here? Because we broke you? We are here because we fear you will break us completely. Will consume us as we consumed others. We'll show no mercy because we showed none. Chen shook his head. That's not how we work. Yes, we can be violent. Yes, we can be brutal. But we can also choose to be merciful. The war is over. You've lost the ability to make new warriors. Your territory is cut in half. But you still exist. You can still change. But change into what? That's for you to decide. The coalition has terms for peace. You'll return the worlds you've conquered. You'll share your biological technology. You'll submit to monitoring. It's not going to be easy. A lot of species want you wiped out completely for what you've done, but humans are arguing for a different path. Why would you defend us? After all the death we caused?
Chen looked at the Queen Mind.
At this creature that represented everything humanity had fought against, and he felt something unexpected. Pity. Because that's what separates us from you. We don't just know how to destroy. We know how to rebuild. We don't just know how to hate. We know how to forgive, and we believe that even a species as alien as yours can learn, can change, can become something better than what you were. The peace talks lasted 3 weeks. The terms were harsh. The Devourers would give up their conquered territories, would allow coalition observers in their space, would share their biological technology for medical purposes. In exchange, they would be allowed to exist, to rebuild their society, to find a new purpose beyond consuming. Not everyone was happy. Many species wanted total destruction of the Devourers, but humanity pushed for peace. And somehow the species that everyone had feared for their violence became the strongest voice for mercy. Captain Sarah Okonkwo sat in a hospital bed, going through physical therapy. Her body was healing slowly. The doctor said she'd never be fit for combat again. Too much damage, too many injuries. She would live, but she would always carry the scars. How are you feeling? Dr. Amara Singh asked, checking her charts. Like I got chewed up and spit out, which is pretty much what happened. Sarah tried to move her left leg. It responded, barely. They're sending me home, aren't they? Your combat days are over, Sarah. I'm sorry. Sarah nodded. She had known it was coming. Part of her was relieved. Part of her felt guilty. So many others hadn't made it back at all. At least she was alive. What will you do? Amara asked. I don't know. Maybe teach. Help train the next generation. Make sure they're ready for whatever comes next. Sarah looked out the window at the stars. We did it, though. We actually did it. Ended a 3,000-year war. That's got to count for something. It counts for everything. You and your Marines bought peace with your blood. That's not going to be forgotten. Across coalition space, changes were happening. Human culture spread like a wildfire. Other species started adopting human concepts. Competition, sports, calculated risk-taking. Things that had seemed insane now seemed exciting, liberating. A Ketharan colony started hosting something called a marathon. Thousands of beings running long distances for no practical purpose except to challenge themselves. It became wildly popular. The Velkari began studying human philosophy. The idea that individuals had worth beyond their contribution to society. It was revolutionary for a species that prized collective harmony above all else. Even the Devourers began to change. Freed from the pressure to constantly expand and consume, their queen minds started developing individual personalities. preferences, opinions. The hive mind remained, but it became more like a network than a dictator. Humanity helped rebuild the worlds the Devourers had damaged. Human engineers worked alongside coalition teams using Devourer biological technology to restore ecosystems. It was strange seeing former enemies work together, but it worked. On Earth, Admiral Chen retired. He had spent 3 years in space, fighting a war that should have destroyed humanity. Instead, it had made them the most respected species in the coalition. And the most feared, he gave a speech at the Coalition Memorial, a massive structure built to honor the fallen. 600,000 names were carved into its walls, human names alongside hundreds of species, all those who had died to end the war. "We came to the stars not knowing what we'd find," Chen said. "We found war. We found death. But we also found purpose. We found friends. We found that the galaxy is bigger and stranger than we ever imagined. And we found that we belong here, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because when others needed help, we answered. When others needed protection, we stood guard. When others needed someone crazy enough to charge into impossible odds, we raised our hands." He paused, looking at the memorial. "At all those names, you feared what we might do. We feared what we might become. Together we learned that fear can be overcome, that enemies can become allies, that peace is possible even after terrible war. The people on this wall paid the price for that lesson. We owe it to them to remember it, to live by it, to build a galaxy where their sacrifice meant something." Ambassador Kelthrin took over as Earth's representative to the Coalition Council. He spent his days navigating the complex politics of 100 species, and he wrote a book in his spare time, Understanding Humanity, a Survivor's Guide. It became required reading for anyone dealing with humans. The key lesson was simple. Humans were dangerous, but they were only dangerous to those who threatened the people they cared about. Earn their loyalty and they would die for you. Betray their trust and nothing in the galaxy could save you. 10 years after the war ended, a young Catharan cadet approached an old human at a veterans memorial. The human was missing an arm and walked with a cane, but his eyes were sharp, alert. "Excuse me, sir. Are you Private James Chen, the one who fought at the Battle of Cathara?" "I am. What can I do for you, kid?" "I'm writing a paper for the military academy about human soldiers. Everyone says humans were never afraid during the war, that you were fearless. Is that true?" James laughed. It was a rough sound, full of old pain. "Kid, I was terrified every single day, scared out of my mind. Every battle I thought I was going to die. But you fought anyway? That's the point. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared and you do it anyway. You do it because someone has to. Because the people next to you are counting on you. Because if you don't stand up, who will?" The cadet thought about that. "My teacher says humans changed the galaxy. Made us all braver. Maybe, or maybe we just showed you that it's okay to be scared. That fear's normal. What matters is what you do with it." James looked at the memorial, at the names of people he'd known, friends who hadn't made it back. "We fought so you wouldn't have to. That was always the goal. To end the war. To make a galaxy where people like you could have a future." "Did it work?" James smiled. It was genuine this time, warm. "You're here, aren't you? Studying at an academy, planning a career, not fighting for your life against the Devourers." "Yeah, kid. I'd say it worked. The galaxy was different now. The fear that had defined coalition space for 3,000 years was gone. In its place was something new. Hope. The belief that problems could be solved. That threats could be overcome. That working together different species could achieve the impossible. And at the center of it all was humanity. The species that everyone had feared. The species that had proven themselves in the crucible of war. They were still dangerous. Still violent when pushed, but they were also compassionate. Loyal. Willing to stand between the innocent and the darkness. The coalition had invited humanity to join the war because they were desperate. Because they needed someone crazy enough to fight impossible odds. What they got was something better. They got allies, friends, people who would stand beside them no matter the cost. The cosmos had waited in fear when humanity stepped into the war. Fear of what humans would do. Fear of what they might become. What the cosmos learned was that humanity was exactly what the galaxy needed. Not in spite of their violence, but because they knew when to fight and when to show mercy. When to destroy and when to rebuild. When to fear and when to hope. The war was over. The peace had begun, and humanity stood guard, watching over a galaxy that had learned to trust them, not because they weren't dangerous, but because they were dangerous in the right way, for the right reasons, to protect rather than to conquer, and that made all the difference. The galaxy was safe, not because the threats were gone, but because when the next threat came, humanity would be there, standing ready, watching the darkness, as they always had, as they always would. Because that was what humans did. They fought so others didn't have to, and they never ever gave up.